Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate. I work on the marketing team at Hollard Health, and I will be introducing you to our amazing speaker today. Welcome to our first webinar of 2026. We're very pleased to have you with us, and we'll continue with the financial wellness webinars. This is the second in a series of 3 financial wellness webinars, focusing on building you confidence, clarity, and balance in your financial life. At Hollard Health, we believe wellness goes beyond physical health. It's about feeling supported across every area in your life, including your financial well-being. Today's session, A Balanced 2026, Setting Financial Goals for the Year Ahead, is about starting the year with intention. We'll be looking at how to reflect on where you are financially, set meaningful goals, and create a practical plan for the year ahead without overwhelm. We're delighted to be joined by Jean Archery, financial wellness coach, author, and international speaker, who I'm sure a lot of you met last year at our previous financial wellness webinar. She will guide us through simple, actionable strategies to help you approach 2026 with clarity and confidence. This is the second session, as I mentioned, in our 3-part financial wellness series, designed to help you strengthen your financial foundations and prepare for life's uncertainties. So without further ado, let's get started.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction, Kate. I think this is such a great opportunity to start the year off on the right foot, so we don't make the same mistakes that we've made in the previous years. And, you know, at the end of the year, we obviously want the attendees to have shifted some of the way they have thought about money, felt about money, and also behaved with money. So on that note, let's kickstart. And I think, you know, the first starting point is to understand why financial balance is actually extremely important when it comes to our overall well-being. Now, you know, when we talk about well-being, a lot of the times we focus on our mental, our physical, as well as our emotional health. But there's one other pillar that we don't actually talk about enough. And I think, you know, a lot of corporates are shifting towards that and have been over the last few years, especially since COVID, because I think that put a lot of things into perspective about, you know, the implications of what our financial wellness also has on other areas of our lives. So why is financial balance absolutely critical for our overall well-being? So first of all, we know that financial stress is a major source of anxiety in our personal lives, in our relationships, and as well as in the workplace. And financial balance isn't just about earning more money, but rather it's about managing, planning, and making better decisions when it comes to our money. And this is the thing that actually contributes to our peace of mind. Money stress is one of the most constant stresses in adult life. And it doesn't just switch off after work. And it's something that doesn't need a crisis to actually cause damage. And it affects so many areas of our lives. First of all, it affects our mental health and our emotional well-being, because it brings a lack of control, security, and also an uncertain future. And that also then affects our sleep quality, which keeps our nervous system activated. It increases our cortisol levels. And it makes it very difficult for us to get rest. And we all know what happens when we don't get enough rest. It then affects our productivity. So studies have also showed that financial stress can actually reduce our cognitive ability in a way that's actually, you can actually compare it to mild sleep deprivation. So I think, you know, as just based on these 3 pillars, you can actually see how it can have an impact on each aspect of of our overall financial well-being. Our financial balance also creates psychological safety. And that is the difference between constantly bracing for impact, so when our stress levels are high, and feeling steady, feeling like we are in control. When people know what's coming in, what's going out, they are then better able to cope with life stresses, and their anxiety levels then start to drop. And, I think I must stress this as well, because financial wellness isn't, or financial balance isn't about being wealthy. It isn't about how much money you earn or how much you have in the bank account. It's about control and clarity. Two people can earn the exact same salary and have absolutely different stresses based on how balanced their finances are. Money also shows up in our relationships, and we know that many conflicts, in a relationship, it isn't really about spending money or saving money. It's more so about fear, security, and fairness, and also that lack of communication that happens between partners when it comes to setting financial goals and having those financial boundaries in place. We also know that financial imbalance can create tension, and, balance allows us to have some sort of breathing room. And we know when our finances are out of control, we end up making reactive decisions instead of proactive ones. But when you have your finances more balanced, people make better life decisions about their health, their career, about setting boundaries, as well as creating and setting goals. And again, balance does not need to mean perfection. It means awareness, having or setting intentional choices, and having the ability to recover when life just happens. And I think the key takeaway for this introductory slide is to understand that financial balance isn't meant to be an admin task or an admin burden. It's actually a wellness strategy. When money stops being a constant source of stress, people tend to function better everywhere else in their lives. So how do we, how do we set the scene for the year going forward? As we enter this new year, and I know we're already in the middle of February, and we know how quickly time actually passes us by. But as we enter this year, still in the first quarter, a lot of people tend to feel this pressure to move forward extremely fast. They set new goals, they've got a fresh big start, and they're also setting big intentions. But emotionally and financially, a lot of people are actually starting over without clarity. And that's why it's so important to take stock before you move forward. And you start doing that by reviewing things that happened in the past year. And we know that every single year we have the rising costs of inflation, we have economic uncertainty, we have family expectations, and we also have social pressure to keep up. And that combination of stresses can actually leave people feeling tired and stretched. And when people don't pause to reflect, three things tend to happen. First of all, their financial decisions are made in urgency. And urgency tends to push people into survival mode. They tend to make quick fixes, increase their short-term borrowing, and they tend to spend more emotionally. Decisions are also made to stop discomfort that they're feeling and experiencing in the moment, not to support their long-term stability. The second consequence is that people tend to abandon their good intentions very quickly. They start the year off motivated and, quit just as fast. And not because they're lazy, but more so because they didn't plan to match what's happening in their real life. When intentions are built on pressure instead of reflection, they will end up collapsing under stress. And the third objective is setting unrealistic goals. We start off the new year highly motivated with lots of energy, and we set these really, very ambitious goals. And our goals sometimes tend to ignore our current income, our current energy levels, the debt or the responsibilities that we have for the year ahead. And these goals don't tend to inspire people. They actually end up overwhelming them. We know what happens when we get overwhelmed. Often we end up avoiding the situation, procrastinating, and delaying the actions that we need to know we need to take. And that is why a review matters so much. You can't properly plan if you don't understand what worked for you, what drained you, or what changed you in the last year. And I think it's important to remember that reflection isn't about judgment. The goal isn't to relive the past year. It's to extract the lessons that we've learned so that we don't repeat those same patterns on autopilot. Because if we don't learn those lessons, they are going to keep repeating themselves until we do something differently. So before moving forward, ask yourself what actually happened and what does that mean for how you can plan better going forward. So let's talk about two patterns that quietly undermine our financial balance. And this is specifically related to money and emotions. And those two things are our emotional spending and irregular or intermittent saving. Emotional spending isn't about being irresponsible. Often it's a response to how we deal with stress, pressure, or it helps, when we're feeling depleted. So if you think about yourself after a long day at work, or at the end of the week, or even at the end of the year, spending actually then becomes a reward or even a relief. And the problem isn't the occasional treat that we allow ourselves to have. The problem is when spending becomes our primary coping mechanism. When money is used to regulate our emotions, it ends up creating that short-term high and eventually a long-term problem. On the saving side, it's not that people don't lack the discipline, they lack emotional safety. And when finances tend to feel overwhelming, saving then becomes inconsistent. We start, we stop, we restart. We avoid checking our bank balances. We don't look at our credit scores. We feel anxious or discouraged, and then we tend to disengage altogether. So, I want us to remember that irregular saving is often a signal. It's not a failure. It's telling us that someone is operating in survival mode, not stability mode. And these two patterns feed each other. Emotional spending, on the one hand, if you're spending all the time, reduces the available cash that we have to be able to save constantly. And that reduced cash then puts us in a situation where we are feeling anxious. It increases our anxiety. And we know that, again, anxiety will make saving feel pointless or impossible. So there's a lot of hidden emotions that we need to be able to deal with as well going forward. But what is important to understand is this. These behaviors are not responses to pressure or personality flaws. Financial balance starts by, first of all, recognizing the patterns without judgment. And once people understand why they behave the way they do when it comes to money, they can then start to change this sustainably. Again, the goal isn't to eliminate emotions from money decisions, but more so to build systems that still work when people are tired, stressed, or overwhelmed. Remember, progress starts with awareness, not so much willpower. Understanding your financial reality starts with a clear and factual view of where you are currently. And that means knowing exactly where you stand. Before you set any goals, before you create any plans or make any changes to how you're behaving with money, there's one non-negotiable step, and that is to understand your financial reality right now. And it isn't estimating things, a factual snapshot of where you actually stand. And a good way of understanding this is to look at your bank balance, to sit down, look at your assets and liabilities, get your credit report, because your credit report actually tells a story of exactly where you are right now. And this clear factual snapshot of where you are can help you to reduce your financial stress. And financial stress often doesn't come from not knowing. It often comes from not knowing, not from the actual numbers itself. And we know that when we have clarity, it reduces anxiety. And there are 4 basics that every single one of us needs to master. The first is to know your actual income, not the salary amount that's showing on your payslip, your actual take-home income, the one that lands in your bank account constantly. Second, your total expenses. Everything counts. The obvious bills and the sneaky ones that actually also drain your cash. Third, your saving capacity. And this is not how much you wish you could save. It's what's realistically possible right now. And the last one is your monthly cash flow. What comes in versus what's leaving your bank account, and what's left at the end of the month, if anything. So to make sense of this, there are 2 basics that you need to distinguish between, that can help you to distinguish this. First is your fixed expenses. And those are things like your rent or bond payments, any loans, insurance, or regular bills that you know is happening on a monthly basis. These are predictable expenses, and they are mostly non-negotiable in the short term. The next one is your variable expenses. These are things you're spending on food, transport, leisure, and any unexpected costs. This is where you can make changes to your behavior, and you can make adjustments that are a little bit more flexible. Understanding these distinctions matters, because then you can start to, because you can't control what you can't see. And the goal here again is not to judge yourself, or it's not to have a perfect plan. It's honesty. And I think when you understand your reality, you can then stop making decisions in the dark. And that's where the real change actually starts to happen. So another thing that also contributes to our financial reality, and I think once we understand our financial reality, the next thing is to figure out what are our financial triggers. And this is important because our money decisions are really ever logical. They're emotional, and sometimes they can be automatic. A financial trigger is any situation that pushes you into either spending more money that's not according to your plan, avoiding dealing with the things that you know you need to deal with, or even giving up without thinking. So there's 3 questions, or 3 simple questions that you can ask yourself. First of all, identify in which situations are you actually spending the most money. Is it when you are stressed, bored, tired, or if you are in a celebratory mood? Because after a tough day at work or a long week, or when you feel, you deserve it, those are situations that might not be aligned to your spending plan. The second question that we need to ask is, when does saving become difficult for me? Is it during months when there are unexpected expenses? Or when my motivation levels drop? Or when checking my bank's balance or my investment or savings balance feels uncomfortable? And the third question is, what habits are keeping you stuck? Is it impulsive spending, avoiding your bank apps, or ignoring your credit report, delaying decisions, or restarting your goals every few months? And this brings us to the first objective of identifying your financial triggers. The first is to move from a space of guilt to a space of understanding. Guilt tends to keep us stuck, and understanding creates space for change. And the second objective is just as important, and that's turning our automatic behaviors into conscious choices. You can't change what you don't notice. But once a trigger becomes visible, it starts to lose its power. And the goal isn't to eliminate emotion from money decisions. The goal is to pause long enough to be able to choose differently. Awareness is the moment where our control begins. So how do we go about setting balanced financial goals for the year ahead. And a lot of our financial goals fail, not because we lack discipline, but because the goal itself is not balanced. A balanced goal is one that supports your life and not one that competes with it. First of all, a good financial goal is realistic. It fits your current income, your responsibilities, your energy, and also the season of your life, because each of us are at different seasons of our lives. If the goal constantly requires sacrifice or stress, it's not going to last. The second thing to remember is that it should be measurable. Vague goals create vague results. You should be able to track progress without guessing or avoiding your bank account. Third, it's aligned to your life circumstances. Your goals must reflect what's actually happening, not what should be happening. Debt, dependence, health, or even career transitions all need to be taken into consideration. Fourth factor to take into consideration is that your goals should be consistent with your personal priorities. If a goal is conflicting with what you value, you are going to abandon it when you are under pressure. Remember, motivation fades, values don't. A balanced goal will also avoid unrealistic pressure, because we know that pressure creates urgency. Urgency creates burnout, and burnout kills our progress. And finally, a balanced goal focuses on sustainable progress. Small, repeatable actions beat big, dramatic plans every single time. And I think the test here is a simple one. A question that you can ask yourself is, can you maintain this goal on a tired month, not just on a good month? Because if a goal can't survive real life, then it's not going to be a good goal. One of the biggest mistakes that people tend to make with their money is trying to solve every single problem at once. And that is a sure track to burnout. Financial goals work best when they are organized by a time horizon. So different goals need different timelines and should also have different expectations. So if we look at the short term, which is 0 to 6 months, the focus here should be on stabilizing your expenses. It should be on stability, not growth. This is about creating a minimum realistic savings plan for the short term. Short-term goals reduce our stress, and again, it helps us to create that breathing room. When we move on to the next term, which is a medium term, which is between 6 to 24 months, this is where we can start to build momentum. And goals typically here in this range include reducing or clearing our debt, financing a specific project like maybe education, a car, or even moving. And these goals require consistency, not so much intensity. And when it comes to the long term, this is where we start planning our future security. This is where we consider long-term investing, retirement planning, as well as wealth creation. And remember, our long-term goals only work when our short and medium-term goals have foundations that are solid. The key point is this: not every goal belongs in the same time frame, and putting long-term pressure on short-term capacity actually tends to create frustration. So remember, you don't need to do everything now, but you do need to do the right thing at the right time. So how do we go about aligning our money with our values and our priorities? The strongest financial goals are not the most aggressive ones. They're the ones that actually fit the life that you want to live. And when our money goals are disconnected from our values, they tend to feel heavy. They weigh us down. And that's what adds to our pressure, our guilt, and we constantly end up second guessing ourselves. Aligned financial goals will tend to do three things. They'll support your quality of life. Your money should make life easier, not harder. And if a goal is draining your energy, your relationships, or your health, then it's actually not aligned. Secondly, they need to be aligned with your values. Remember, our values guide our behavior, especially when our motivation levels disappear. And if your goals are not reflecting what matters to you, might be security, family, freedom, or peace, and that will be different for all of us, then you are far more likely not to stick to them if they're not aligned to that. And thirdly, they strengthen your sense of security and freedom. Remember, financial balance shouldn't be about restricting yourself. It's about creating options and reducing fear about the future. So when your money, your values, and priorities are aligned, something shifts. Money stops being the problem that you are constantly managing. It becomes what it's actually meant to be, and that is a tool, not a source of ongoing stress. So what are some examples of balanced financial goals? The first thing is to build an emergency fund. This is where protection happens. Even a small buffer can reduce panic and it prevent debt when life happens. Because what tends to happen is a lot of people use credit to fund emergencies. And sometimes not all of us are able to access credit. You also want to gradually reduce your debt. Remember, the goal here is consistency, not to punish yourself. So have a sustainable plan in place that helps you to gradually reduce your debt. And then save with a clear purpose. Saving works better when money has a job. And you can have 4 or 5 different savings goals, that is for specific purposes. A defined goal does create motivation and it reduces the temptation to dip into savings. So what I do with a lot of my clients, and some bank accounts allow you to do this, you can go and open up 5 or 6 different accounts, savings accounts for different goals. You can even name those accounts. So if, as an example, you want to go on an overseas holiday in 2 years' time, you can name that account Holiday Fund. And if you want to go out one evening and you don't have access to any available funds and you take money out of your holiday fund, you are actually making a trade-off in that very moment. And seeing yourself taking money out, it is planted in your mind, and it does help you to make the decision better, as opposed to just making the decision on autopilot. So all of our goals have one thing in common. They move us forward without putting us at risk. And financial balance, again, as I said previously, doesn't mean doing everything at once. It means building stability while still making progress. So how do we avoid putting unrealistic financial pressure on ourselves? A lot of our financial stress comes from timelines that actually look good on paper, but in real life, it tends to collapse. We tell ourselves things like, I'll be debt-free in 6 months. Or I'll just be disciplined without accounting for any unexpected costs that might arise during the course of the year. We also don't take into consideration emotional fatigue or the fact that also life just tends to happen. And some of these common pressures that we put on ourselves is setting the goals with aggressive or unrealistic timelines. So again, I want to be debt-free in 6 months, but you don't have enough free or available cash flow to actually pay off your debt within 6 months. Setting over optimistic budgets. So as an example, saying to yourself, I can cut my expenses by 30%. So that might be unrealistic. Or ignoring our existing responsibilities. So saying things like, I don't have to worry about any extra school costs, or not being able to make provision for those things. When our goals are unrealistic, people don't just tend to fall short. They disengage completely. And that's why, even if you look at New Year's goals or New Year's resolutions, a lot of people by the second month have forgotten about those goals because they've set unrealistic goals. Unrealistic goals also tend to lead to guilt, shame, and ultimately quitting. A good financial goal should actually stretch you slightly, but not make you feel like you are constantly behind. So, another thing that I want to talk about, and I think this also tends to happen around the holiday or the festive season, is the impact of comparison and social expectations. Comparison is one of the biggest silent saboteurs of financial well-being. And social media has made comparison a daily aspect of our lives. We compare our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reels. We see their promotions, their holidays, their new cars, and often we don't see what is behind that. We don't see the debt that comes with that, or potentially the support that they are getting as a result from being able to live that lifestyle. Social media fuels lifestyle inflation. It fuels silent financial competition, and it gives us this idea that everyone else is winning besides us. But again, what you don't see is the debt, the family support, or the financial stress behind the scenes. Social expectations creates that added pressure to spend, even when it contradicts our own priorities. And comparison often distorts decision making. Your financial plan needs to be unique. It needs to fit in with your personal income, your values, and the season of life that you find yourself in. And remember, your financial journey it isn't late, it isn't wrong, and it's not failing. It's just different. And that's okay. Another thing that we need to remember or to try and switch from is a mindset of everything needs to be perfect. There is no such thing as perfect. But most of us want to wait till the perfect time or until we have the perfect plan. Perfection is the enemy of progress, especially when it comes to our money. People often stop or they give up or up just because they've missed a month or they've overspent once, and then they decide they failed. But consistency over time actually matters far more than speed or intensity. Small actions done monthly can actually outperform big actions that is done once. And also missed months does not equate to failure. So if you didn't do something this month, it doesn't mean that you failed your plan. So what does consistent action look like? For example, saving 500 Rand consistently instead of saving 5,000 Rand all at once. Adjusting the plan instead of abandoning it is also extremely important. Remember, our financial success comes from showing up imperfectly month after month. So here are two practical strategies that I'd like to share with you that can help you to stay on track. And again, I think it's very important to remember that you don't need motivation. What you actually need are systems. There's a great book that I've read a couple of years ago called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he talks about how to go about setting goals and putting these systems and processes in place from a very practical perspective. And it's a great, great book to read for any goal that you want to, or any changes that you want to make in your life. So the two strategies are to create simple monthly check-ins and adapt goals when your life changes. So we'll have a look at this in a little bit more detail. So when it comes to creating simple monthly check-ins, basically a simple monthly check-in creates awareness without giving you that overwhelm. It helps you to replace your daily stress with a monthly rhythm. So you don't need to be tracking your money every single day because often that does increase our stress levels. And again, the goal isn't judgment here. Or to feel guilty. It's to provide information. A check-in ideally should take between 15 to 20 minutes, not hours, because you don't want to, when something is too long, we tend to avoid it as well. And some monthly check-in questions that you can ask yourself is what worked, what didn't, what do I need to stop, or is there anything that I need to change or adjust for the next month? Things that you can review are your income, your key expenses, your savings, or the progress that you've made towards your debt. I promise you that clarity once a month will beat panic on a daily basis. The second strategy to put in place is to adapt your goals as life changes. We know that life doesn't stay static, and neither should your financial goals. Our income changes, our responsibility might shift, our energy levels fluctuate, or your career may have also been impacted. There might be an increase in medical expenses, maybe due to an illness, or you might have family responsibilities that have crept up. And all of this might affect your or impact your emotional capacity. So adjusting your goals doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you're actually paying attention to what is going on. Because a flexible plan will survive real life than a non-flexible one. A rigid plan usually ends up breaking. And adjusting goals is it's a skill. It's not a failure. So some practical tips that you can apply here is to review your goals if your income or your expenses are changed by 10 to 15%, whether that goes up or down. And to remember that goals are tools, they're not rules. And flexibility actually contributes to your resilience. So what is financial resilience? Financial resilience is the impact or is the ability to absorb financial shocks without having to panic. And financial resilience is not about being wealthy. It's about being prepared. Because resilience reduces our stress. It gives us options. And it's something that's built over time, not overnight. It's something that's built slowly by making small, intentional decisions over time. And resilience is steady when life gets expensive. So how do you go about building financial resilience? Here is a strategy to help you to build financial resilience. The first thing that you want to do is to prepare for those unexpected events. And, I think the thing to remember here is that emergencies aren't rare. They're actually guaranteed. And it's guaranteed to happen to every single one of us. None of us are immune from having an emergency. And what is unpredictable or what's unpredictable about an emergency is when it actually happens. And a lot of the common unexpected events are medical costs, repairs to our cars or maintenance, and changes to our income. Planning for the unexpected doesn't make you negative, because I know a lot of people have this, this belief that if they plan for negative events, then they are going to attract that into their lives. It doesn't make you negative. It actually makes you practical. Planning also reduces emotional as well as financial damage. And it turns financial emergencies into more manageable setbacks instead of a crisis. And one way of doing that is obviously having an emergency savings. That is one of the most powerful tools that you can use for your financial well-being. And you don't need to start big. You just need to start. And remember that this money that you're saving isn't for growth or lifestyle upgrades. It's for your peace of mind. Because an emergency fund actually buys you time, it gives you calm, and it helps you to make better decisions. So how do you go about building your emergency fund? Again, remember to start small. Remember, consistency matters. So, look at your salary, look at how much you are able to spend or save on a monthly basis, even if it's, a small percentage that you're putting away on a monthly basis. You want to be able to start building that buffer. An ideal target is to save up between 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses. Obviously, the longer expenses that you've saved up for, the more time you actually buy on your side. Especially if you were to lose your income, replacing income in a environment where we have high unemployment rates will tend to happen, sometimes longer than 3 to 6 months. I've seen instances where people after 2 years have only able to secure alternative employment. Your savings also, you want to make sure you're keeping it accessible and separate from any other savings. So, also with in February, obviously February is the month of love. Valentine's Day is around the corner. But, one of the things that we don't often practice is self-care. And I don't think we think of financial flexibility as a form of self-care, but actually it is. Financial flexibility allows us to respond instead of react. It gives us the freedom to say no if we need to. It gives us the ability to handle surprises calmly, to be able to rest and make choices that's aligned with our values. Think about a time in your life when you didn't have that financial flexibility. You're panicking because you don't know where you're going to be able to access those funds from to help out with that emergency. So just think back to a time when you did go through that and how it impacted your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, and even your physical well-being. Self-care isn't just about spending money, but it's about preparing for life. Some ways of doing this is you can buffer into your budget an amount that you'd like to save on a monthly basis. Always remember that savings is more important and comes before lifestyle upgrades. And you also want to give yourself room to rest and not just be working all the time. Remember, there's no perfect financial plan. There's only one that works for your life. You don't need to get everything right, and you don't need to have a perfect plan. But what you do need is you need a plan that you can live with month by month. So here are some actionable steps that you can apply immediately. The first is to know your numbers. Track your income, your expenses, your debt, as well as your savings. Remember, awareness is the first step to having that control. And, to have that control, you have to have clarity on exactly what that picture looks like. So I have an Excel spreadsheet. When I create a financial wellness plan for my coaching clients, I will get their credit reports. I will look at their bank statements. I'll look at their investment portfolios, and we keep track of that on an annual basis. So this is something that you can do yourself. Just put everything documented on a spreadsheet. And it's also a great tool to share if you're married with your partner, just so that they also have an understanding of what the current situation is. Because one of the things that we also find is that when someone passes away, no one knows exactly what expenses need to be paid, what investments and savings, are available until the estate is wound up. The next step that you can take is to set at least one priority goal. Focus on one single goal for the next 90 days. Either it is to build your emergency fund or to tackle a specific debt. And thirdly, create a monthly check-in. Spend at least 15 minutes, put a calendar reminder, maybe once a month on a Saturday, whatever time works for you on your calendar, so that you're reminded that this is time set aside specifically for me to do my monthly check-in. Spend 15 minutes each month reviewing your progress, because remember, consistency wins over intensity. So, one small change that can have a really big impact on your finances, and I swear by this, and it's a very simple practice, and that is to track your spending for just 30 days. Now, yes, you can go and look at your bank statements, and obviously we have an idea of, those fixed expenses especially. But when it comes to our variable expenses, often we tend to estimate, most of the time underestimating how much we are actually spending on a certain thing. And I know that sounds, like a basic principle or basic practice. What you measure, you are able to manage. Tracking your spending isn't, again, about judging yourself or feeling bad about spending money. It's about awareness. When you can actually see where your money is going, hidden habits start to surface. And those little leaks that tend to add up over time start to show up. And this awareness gives you power. You start making smarter decisions without forcing drastic changes. Maybe you notice things like spending more on takeout than you realized, or that the subscriptions that you have, you are not actually using, but it's actually draining your account. And again, every cent actually counts and can actually work in your favor. But you will never be able to take back control if you don't start with this practice or knowing exactly where your money is going. Another idea, if you don't, so what I do is if I'm buying groceries, I can, on my phone, it allows me to create notes. So every single time I spend money, I'll go onto my notes and I'll make a note of so obviously it takes a little bit of practice. The alternative that you can do is to have one specific account And again, what you got to use what works for you practically. So you could potentially just put a certain amount of money. So say you are allocating 10% of your salary towards personal use and entertainment, and that goes into a specific transactional account. And all your personal use and entertainment needs to be going off that account. No other accounts or cards need to be used or should be used. And at the end of the month, you can actually then go and track and see exactly how much you spent on those categories of expenses. But even small adjustments, like cooking at home once a week or canceling that unused subscription, can actually compound over time into real savings. And I promise it makes such a big difference. The action is simple. Pick a 30-day window. What I suggest to my clients is usually from one payday to the next, and track every single cent that you are spending. Again, remember, no judgment, just observation. Because by the end of the month, you'll have clarity, you'll have insight, and you'll have the ability to make choices that will actually improve your financial future. Another thing that we need to remember is that, a lot of people think setting financial goals is just a once-off. Set it and forget about it. But in reality, your goals also need to evolve as your life does. Start every year, every quarter, you could start by reviewing your goals. And again, it doesn't have to be something that's complicated. It's just to take a look at, see what's working, what's not, and what needs to be changed. Remember, life happens, and your goals need to be able to reflect that. When you adjust your goals, you don't feel guilty, and changing a goal isn't failure. It's smart planning. The key here is progress and not perfection. Even small steps forward matter and compound over time. And remember, financial clarity isn't something, it's not static. Your priorities, your income, your expenses, and even your opportunities that's made available to you shift. So your goals also need to shift. By staying flexible and intentional, you can stay in control of your financial journey instead of letting it control you. So don't set goals and lock them away. Check in quarterly, adjust them without guilt. And this will actually lead to long-term financial success. I think, a lot of people ask me, how long will it take for them to be financially well? And I think the important thing that I cannot stress here is that financial wellness, financial balance, it's a journey. It's not something that we achieve and then we can forget about it. Because as, again, life changes, so too will that journey. There's going to be seasons of progress. There's going to be seasons of pause. But true balance comes from alignment with our goals and our values, not from restricting ourselves or striving for perfection. And I think the key thing is to start where you are. Remember, there's no perfect starting point. Every single step forward, no matter how small, actually counts. You don't need to wait for the right time. Today is always a good day to begin. Achieving financial health isn't just about numbers. It supports our overall well-being. And I think when I started with the introduction, we talked about the value that financial balance has on our overall well-being. When your finances are in order, your stress level, your mental health improves, and you are able to make better life choices. Remember, again, money is not a tool. It's not something to fear. It's there to help you create the life you want, not to control you. So start today, take small steps, align your finances with your values, and watch how financial balance begins to support not just your wallet, but your entire life. As we wrap up, because I want to spend some time seeing if there's any questions, but as we wrap up, here's the most important thing that I would like you to walk away with today. Take action today. Even one small step can set the tone for your entire financial year. You have a few options. You can review your finances this week, draw your credit report, know where your money is going, or set one clear financial goal for 2026. Something specific that you can focus on. Or you can schedule your first monthly check-in to make sure you track your progress and that you stay consistent. Remember again, you don't have to do everything all at once. the key here is to take at least one action. Progress builds momentum, and momentum is what creates real, lasting change. Every small choice that you make now has an impact on your future, and it compounds over time. I mean, when I look at some, investment savings that I've taken for my daughter when she was, much younger, and it started off with a small amount and it's compounded over time, and you don't feel it when it's a small amount. Set up a debit order, let it go off on the day that you get paid. And I promise you, you don't miss that money. It builds that momentum and it creates that culture and that habit of saving and investing for yourself. Your future self will thank you for the step that you take today. So please pick one action, commit to it, and watch how it starts shaping a healthier, more confident financial life. So we've given you all the information, and the knowledge we've shared with you today is not going to be valuable unless you apply it to your own personal life. Financial well-being is living within your means with confidence. So the first poll is, how confident do you currently feel about your financial situation going into 2026? So it ranges from extremely not confident to neutral to extremely confident. The next poll is, which of the following best describes your main financial focus for the coming year? So what are you choosing to focus on for this year? Is it reducing debt, building savings or an emergency fund, better managing monthly expenses, planning for future milestones, or gaining overall financial clarity? What do you find most challenging when trying to set and maintain financial goals? So is it that social comparison? Is it feeling overwhelmed or pressured? Is there lack of clarity or structure, unexpected expenses, or staying consistent? And after this webinar, what would be most valuable for you to take away? Would you want practical steps that you can apply immediately, a clearer understanding of my financial habits, more realistic and balanced goal setting, tools to build financial resilience, or reduce stress all around? And then the last poll, to what extent do emotions such as stress, anxiety, or optimism influence your financial decisions when it comes to spending or savings? Is it a great deal, somewhat, very little, or none at all?
I also see there's quite a few good questions popping up on the chat. Can you see them? Would you like me to read them to you, Jean?
Okay.
So the first one is, will you share the slides? And I've responded to that. Yes, I've put the our website URL in the chat there. Just give it a few days while our IT team just gets everything uploaded. But you'll also be able to see all of the past webinars there as well. That's the webinar recordings, and the presentations are available there, which is great. Okay, a question for Eugene. What is your advice on savings at the moment that will create a difference over time?
This is a very tricky question, because it is extremely difficult to give advice based on not understanding the full picture. The best thing that you could potentially do is to reach out to a financial advisor or a financial planner and get some ideas in terms of your holistic plan, because again, there's so many different savings and investment options available, and saying this best option is obviously not wise, because it's not going to be taking into account your personal goals and circumstances. I mean, if it is for an emergency, obviously, and I think ideally you want to keep money in a bank savings account, and you can contact your bank and ask them for what options are available to you, because you want immediate access to that investment or savings.
And then the next question is, what is prudent to reduce debt, and then in brackets it says loan, or make savings, noting that the interest on the loan is higher than the interest on the savings?
Okay, so again, this is also quite a tricky situation, because
it's so unique to the situation, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's very difficult to give advice, and I mean, most financial advisors are bound by code of ethics, and we know that giving general rating members But again, if you want that personal advice, you can reach out to your Hollard consultants as well and ask them for some guidance and direction. So, one of the things that that we deal with when it comes to, should I save or should I pay off my debt? Again, you need to look at the goals. You need to look at relationship with money, how you behave with money. You got to look at how much debt that you currently have, because if the debt has been as a result of not having access to savings. So you've in an emergency, or you've been using credit to actually fund emergencies, then paying off that debt and not having any savings will you end up getting into debt again in any event. So having a balanced approach and having a plan that has some money maybe going towards the savings and a portion going towards paying off your debt. But if it is for investment also, you got to look at the type of returns that you're going to be getting on an annual basis, and compare that to how much of interest you're going to be saving by paying off that debt.
The next comment is, kindly share a sample expense tracker. Do you have any that, like a go-to online expense tracker that's great, that works really well?
Not at the moment. I mean, the one that I use is specifically in my coaching conversations, so it's a bit difficult to share that one. But again, I mean, it's actually, if you go onto my website, I think there is a money journal that you are able to download.
Okay, so next question, how can I invest or make use of an amount that I may have sitting at the bank?
Again, it depends on, your goals. So what is the goal for that or intention for that savings? Is it an emergency? Is it to save towards education, a long-term, a deposit on a house? So again, it's very difficult to say which investment product will suit a savings if there's no understanding of what the goal is.
And
how do I keep my emergency money? Cash, definitely bank savings account where you have immediate access to your money.
Okay, and then the next one is, please share details of your financial advisor planner. So Gina's left the URL for her website just below.
Yeah, you're welcome to email me as well. I'll just add my email address.
And then there's a lovely comment, appreciation comment here. Thank you for saying it's okay to adjust every month depending on situations. And I agree with that. I love the idea of progress, not perfection. And I think that gets a lot of us. We think everything has to be perfect in order to be financially successful. And so much of it is about reflecting on how things are going.
I think also a lot of people have a lot of guilt around debt. And I always say that debt is not something, it's telling us a story. It's not failure, it's feedback. And it's telling us where the problems actually lie. So, instead of feeling guilty or feeling like you've failed, the important thing is that it's telling you a story, and to figure out how do you move forward from this and what changes need to be made. I think, a lot of us are so overwhelmed with the amount of debt that we have that we tend to ignore, and ignorance might be bliss, it's very expensive. And that's just something that, to keep in mind.
Yeah. Just to also let you know that Jean will be doing a third financial wellness webinar later on in the year. We will use your feedback from the polls to get more specific on what that will be about, but just keep an eye on your inbox and we will let you know. That'll be later on in the year. Yeah, and Jean, thank you so much for sharing such amazing insights. I like with the last one, I took notes. And also just to everyone, just remember that financial wellness is a journey, and each small intentional step you take builds confidence and resilience for the future. As I said earlier, and just to remind you that the videos and presentations will be available at hollardhealth.com/video guides. I've left the link in the chat. Just give us some time to upload the most recent webinars. Also, just a reminder about our next webinar, which will take place on the 26th of March. The theme is a parenting and digital health theme, which is a new area for us. I think it's a new area for so many of us. The topic will be Screen Smart, Healthy Tech Habits for Kids and Families. So it's going to be very relevant to any parents
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. See you next month.